There. Well, good to see everyone today. It is as much as we love being outside. Isn't it nice to be back inside? And just really special. So good to see everybody. And is the temperature okay, everybody? Yes. Yeah, up here I could feel a breeze up here a little bit. It's really cool. So we're trying. Our goal was to make outside like inside like outside as best we can without having to be too cold. So we're working towards that. I think we're getting pretty close. There might be some other things we can add in. So we'll keep you all posted. So why don't we jump in? Ralph, are we ready to go? Okay, good. So we're going to be continuing again in our series in the book of Ephesians. Last week I spoke on anger from Ephesians chapter 4, verses 25 through 31. And I said that it was going to be two parts. Part one was last time more theory, bigger picture. And then this week is part two of that message. So I'd like to get a little bit more practical, maybe even workshop-y. So if you do have like a notebook or something like that and would like to kind of do an exercise that we'll do towards the middle of the message, you can do that, or just listen either way. And we'll take the theology and the ideas that we discussed last week and make them more tangible by walking through how to work on a specific area that causes you to have anger in your life and how to work on that in a practical way. And I'm excited to use Jacob and Esav from our parshat Toldot as our primary example of anger today. And it just kind of fit together. I thought that was really neat. So let's review just a few of the themes that I think we need to review in order to get to where we need to be today. So last week, we discussed how anger poisons communities. Anger poisons families and individuals. It tears relationships apart. It damages children. Many people do not understand anger. They don't have a plan for anger in their life, and it's just the natural go-to emotion to express or to act on feelings. So we discussed this passage. Let me read to you the excerpts from chapter 4, verse 26, beginning in 25b. We are, Ralph, you can go to the next slide so we can have it up on the slide there. And we are members of one another. Be angry, yet do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, nor give Satan a foothold. Let no harmful word come out of your mouth, but only what is beneficial for building others up according to the need, so that it gives grace to those who hear it. Do not grieve the Ruach HaKodesh of God, by whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. Do not grieve the Spirit. Get rid of all bitterness and rage and anger and quarreling and slander, along with all malice. Instead, be kind to one another, compassionate, forgiving each other, just as God and Messiah also forgave you. Psalm 37, you can go to the next slide. Psalm 37:9 reads, "Put away anger and turn away from wrath. Throw it out. Get rid of it. Put it off." Proverbs 22:24 instructs us, "Do not even be friends with one given to anger or associate with a hot-tempered person." Ecclesiastes 7:9, we read, "Do not be quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger lodges in the heart of fools." So we defined an angry spectrum based on even some of Paul's words, with annoyance and irritation at one side and bitterness and rage on the other. Paul covers the spectrum of angry actions: resentment, hurtful words, slander, quarreling, malice, bitterness, anger internalized as a lifestyle, rage, anger out of control. We discussed how anger is a misunderstood emotion. Emotions are like the eyes of the heart, but they all have a purpose. They provide us with information about life that we need. Emotions are designed to pass through our hearts, give us this information, and then go on. So we need to learn how to take the information from these emotions, process them, and then let them go. That's the basis of an anger plan. Anger is a diagnostic tool. We unpacked that in some detail. Anger is like a warning flag that there's a problem that we need to solve. But anger is not the solution to the problem. Sin is the angry, harsh word. Anger, the sin is not the emotion of anger. We sin when we use anger as the tool to solve the problem. It's very important you get that. We don't sin by feeling angry. We sin by acting on our anger as the tool to solve the problem. The angry word, the snarky comment, the silent treatment, the withdrawal, the irritated sigh, the rolling of the eyes, the bitter root. Anger is great at identifying problems, never good at solving problems. Okay, I think that's really helpful to make that distinction. Okay, last week we laid out kind of a big plan for in-the-moment anger, like stop, we talked about that, then identify what the problem is, and then choose your solution. And ideally, this becomes a process that happens over a second or two in the moment, but that's very difficult. So the way to get there is by taking time when you're not angry to create a targeted plan for a specific problem, let's say, and then practice your plan. And once you get a handle of one problem area, then the others become easier to manage. That's the way this works. So let's zero in and unpack a particular problem. So if you'd like to kind of create your own plan, if you have something in your life right now that you feel like, golly, this is an area where I tend to get angry, that would be a good thing to work on today. And you can think about it or you can write it down. And if not, it's something that's helpful to know for others, especially for children. I'm going to use Jacob and Esav as an example to create what would have been an anger plan for them if they thought in these terms. Okay, so this is, we can go to the next slide up there, and I'll have the plan out here that we can then walk through. So what we're doing here with this plan is very biblical. It's a tool to live out Ephesians 4:26. Do not sin in your anger. Well, Paul says that, but how do we do that? It's very difficult. The roadmap goes like this. Identify the cues, the arena, the triggers, the cues. Stop. You need a plan for how to stop in the moment, and then you need to have a plan to solve the problem and practice that plan. So we'll walk through those. Now, in the Torah, it's really interesting. There's no record of Abraham acting in anger. He's a righteous man, but there's no anger for Abraham. He was a man of righteousness, but not so with his grandchildren. It kind of took a turn. Jacob and Esav wrestled, even in the womb, it says. I wonder if Esav was born angry. He becomes a hunter, a man of fighting, perhaps avoiding, perhaps always sort of in this conflict with his brother. Jacob is born holding on to the heel, Esav's heel of his brother. And our tradition interprets this as an attempt to thwart his brother, even in birth. Jacob's anger is more passive, let's say. He stays at home to be with his mother, perhaps avoiding conflict. Perhaps harboring anger in the form of resentment or even bitterness towards his brother. Dad loves Esav, the Torah tells us. Mom loves Jacob. Having favorite children is a recipe for angry children. Just put that out there. Having favorite children is a recipe for angry children on both sides, even the favorite. Now, we see anger throughout the entire narrative of their story. Of course, we only read a small part today. The whole parsha is longer, and it goes through Jacob and Esav's story. We might say that Jacob's clever way of getting his brother to give him his birthright, with the whole bowl of soup incident, is passive-aggressive. Esav comes in after the hunt. He's been out for a long time. He demands food in his gruff way. Instead of Jacob saying, I'm angry that you get the privileges of the firstborn, but you don't care about the important things of family life like I do. He doesn't say that. Instead, he says, you want some food? Sell me your birthright. Esav replies, I'm about to die. What good is my birthright? Whatever. See, maybe what Esav really means is, I'm feeling resentful because you aren't valuing my contribution to the family. But he doesn't say that. He's passive. He doesn't say that. Instead, I'm about to die. Who cares about this? Jacob angrily slaps some soup into Esav's bowl, getting back at his brother by tricking Esav. And Esav leaves with a I don't care anyway remark, and they both leave angry. This anger problem runs the course of their lives. It's filled with jealousy and envy and sibling strife. And these are all emotions that can easily land somewhere on the anger spectrum, especially when you add selfishness to the mix. Jealousy is anger at what you don't have. Sibling conflict is filled with irritations and frustrations and injustices and bitterness. Again, bitterness, anger internalized. Revenge, even rage. So the first part of our plan is to identify the cues. This includes the arena. Arena, let's call like the boxing ring. That's where these things happen. But we're not looking for the arena, a physical arena. We're looking for the arena inside of your soul, inside of your nephesh, inside of your heart. What happens inside your heart when you get angry? The triggers are what happen externally around you in the arena, and the cues are the physical experiences that you have of that anger. So you know, I'm angry because I feel this way. So arena, well, let's unpack the arena. The arena focuses on what causes the problem. Last week I shared a list, in a little bit more detail, of the basic causes for anger. And this is incomplete. There's a lot other causes you could say, and don't get hung up on everything fitting into a certain category. You can create your own cause. But this is a list from Scott Transky's book on anger. It goes physical pain, like, ouch, I stubbed my toe, and you're angry. Blocked goals, violated rights or injustices, unfairness, unmet expectations, or maybe disappointments, or even rejection. So one of these could be your arena. This is the arena of the heart. For Esav, we might imagine that his resentment builds in the arena of, let's say, unfairness. Jacob is clearly favored by his mother. Perhaps Esav is angry because his contribution to the family isn't valued by mom and his brother. They don't get it. They don't understand him. He feels it's unfairness is his arena. Maybe for Jacob, his passive anger might be in the heart arena of violated rights. His brother has the birthright, but he doesn't even value it. A violated right. So if you're making your own anger plan, what do you think is in the arena? Take a guess. Maybe write it down. If you get angry when you're late and there's traffic, like we talked about last time, if something gets in the way of your plans, maybe you have an arena of blocked goals. When a goal is blocked that you have, you feel angry. When you get angry that things don't go your way, perhaps that could be unmet expectations. Or in conflict, maybe violated rights or unfairness. Someone said something rude to you, and that was wrong. Unfairness. Okay, so figure out what that is, because that's going to help you identify the problem and then come out with a real solution. Triggers, that's the next category. So what happens externally? And then that triggers you in this arena. If Jacob were here, he might write down, Esav comes inside, romping around and demands food that I've been cooking all day. That makes me angry. That would be his trigger, you see? Esav might write, when Jacob makes himself out to be better than me, I get angry. So the trigger is the thing that makes you mad. Traffic, I lost my keys. My mother makes a critical comment. My child ignores my instruction. When my husband or my wife interrupts me when I'm talking, that would be the trigger that you'd want to identify. The trigger puts you in the arena. Lost keys is a blocked goal, you see? You can't get what you want. You won't get to where you need to be. So recognizing the triggers in the arenas is really critical because it separates the emotion from the problem and raises the awareness of the real issues. I'm getting angry because my husband showed up late, someone might say. That's the trigger. That's because I feel that my expectations were not met. That's the arena. And this empowers you then to find a solution that doesn't involve anger. Doesn't involve anger. Next on the list is Q. How can you first tell when you're starting to get angry? And these are things you want to write down and be aware of. A lot of people just get angry. They don't even know it. They just get angry and feel justified in it and just blah. So these are usually signs in your body. Last week we discussed how anger is an emotional energy. It's emotional energy that builds. I shared a story of when a tomato, we had a tomato and burst a tomato at breakfast. And it splattered everywhere to demonstrate what happens when anger builds and then it pops. Dave, you reminded me last week about Alan Marines, who uses the analogy of a match and a fuse to the explosion. So you need to become aware of what happens inside of you from when the match is struck to when it lights the fuse to when it explodes in the angry act, like a sarcastic comment. a harsh word, or buried inward in resentment. Many people feel a burn inside. Is that, burn? You get this like hot. People's eyes will squint, their eyebrows raise on the outsides. They clench their fist, grit teeth, growl sometimes. We call it stew for a reason, simmers and stews. It's like boiling inside. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. Esav's anger gradually builds until Isaac is old and blind, and he calls for Esav to prepare a meal of wild game so that he can give him his blessing before he dies. Rebekah wants to see Jacob receive the blessing and comes up with a plan to trick him. Jacob is reluctant because he fears his father and brother's anger. He's probably seen it before. But she convinces him, and because he's passive, and he tricks his father and receives the blessing rather than Esav. This is the last straw for Esav. The fuse is lit. Their unresolved sibling conflict has come to a head, and Esav's resentment toward his brother bursts into rage. The Torah says that it burst into wild and bitter sobbing, it says. And then this rage settled, and he seethes inside, the Torah says, and makes a plan to kill his brother as soon as his father has died. This is the far end of the angry spectrum, what happens when anger becomes your solution. Of course, we see the same thing with Cain and Abel, other stories too. Murder is the end result. James 1:19, be slow to get angry. The key for the anger plan is that you learn to identify your smallest and most subtle cues of anger when the first wave comes, when that happens inside, or better, that your body knows it even before it happens. So you write down your physical cues, what they are. For the first hints of annoyance, we're not just talking about anger, we're talking about annoyance. When you get annoyed at your spouse a little bit for leaving the cabinet door open or the toilet seat up or whatever, the socks out or something like that. The socks, that's my problem, the socks. So I leave the socks out. I don't get it. Anyways, you could ask Rain about that later. You want to identify these things. Identify the arena, the triggers, and the cues. Now, I know for me, I feel angry. This is an arena for me. When someone speaks rudely to me, that's a trigger. The arena for this trigger is that my rights feel violated because I feel like they shouldn't speak rudely to me. And then the cue is that I start to burn inside, and I bite my bottom lip like this, and I squint my eyes, and I start to breathe really heavy. That's what I do when I get angry. My kids know that. And by the way, the kids point this out. Sometimes I'll close my eyes like this and breathe to try to not get angry, and they're like, when you do that, it feels just like you're getting angry. Like I might as well have yelled at them because the same signals come across and have the same message. So it has to stop even before that. That's where our plan has to go even earlier. And that moves us to our second part of the plan. Stop. Ephesians 29 is very clear. Stop. Let no harmful word come out of your mouth. Get rid of bitterness. Get rid of rage, anger, quarreling, slander, along with all malice. It doesn't just say, if it is a soft way or this, that. It's get rid of it. You've got to get it out. Proverbs 29:11, fools give vent to their anger, but a wise man keeps his anger under control. Self-control is the quality, the midah, that we would need to practice, the art of self-control. You must stop the anger before it turns into an angry action and a sin. And that has to be very quick because anger turns into sin very quickly. In the match analogy, you stomp on the fuse, You put the match out immediately. Better you throw the match away before you even light it, you see. Anger is a very strong emotion with lots of intensity that moves very quickly like a wind or a tornado, and we must master it. Like I said last week, I don't think that venting anger by yelling or hitting a pillow or going in the woods and screaming, I don't think it's healthy at all. We need to learn how to let anger pass without turning it into angry actions. Okay. Now remember, emotions are designed to pass through our hearts and give us this information about life and then move on. So you need to find ways of letting the anger just pass through very quickly. It can immediately turn to another emotion. That's a very healthy way of doing this. Anger can turn into sadness about the problem. Or anger could turn into a resolve to fix the problem sometimes. So do things. Find out what works for you. Take a walk. Step outside. Get a glass of water. Get on your knees and pray. Just take a deep breath. Maybe repeat a word. Stop to yourself. Try to smile. Sometimes that helps people. Figure out what works for you. In your plan, try something. Write it down and try it. Practice it. See if it works. If it doesn't, try something else. What's worked for you in the past? That would be a question I would ask you if we were working on this together. What's worked in the past? Then practice it when you're not angry first, and then bring it into the arena when you do and say, okay, here's a great opportunity. I'm in my arena, where, I don't know, the cabinet's left open or the toilet seat's up, and this is a great opportunity for me to practice my plan. You see it very differently when you think like that. Sometimes anger management problems actually stop at controlling your anger. They, like plans, they say, oh, well, just stop it, and they leave it at that. But I think it misses the point, because if anger is a tool that says, Houston, we have a problem, then you'll never address anger unless you find solutions to that problem that don't involve anger. It'll just keep coming back again. Now, our tradition links the most significant tragic events in Jewish people's history to this interaction between Jacob and Esav. The Edomites, who helped destroy the first temple, and the Romans, who destroyed the second temple, in our tradition by the sages, are considered the spiritual ancestors of Esav. The point that they're trying to make is that Esav's anger has never found a real solution. One angry act after another has been a sore in Israel's flesh for thousands of years. Once you have a tool to stop, you need to have a plan to choose how to respond in order to solve your problem. And that takes us to step 3. We practice a different response. Practice. Without the added emotional intensity of anger, you can be more equipped to understand what your problem is and then to go and solve it in healthy ways. So you want to write your solution down on the plan before you get into the angry moment. That's really important. Then you practice this. This really works if you are intentional. If it's a specific fight that you're dealing with you and your spouse, let's say, a solution might be an apology or a conversation. Maybe using feeling words. I was disappointed when. I was frustrated. I was concerned when. It might be to practice listening. That could be a solution. If your rights are being violated, you may need to make a boundary. You can intentionally use a firm word. When you said that comment, it hurt me. It was wrong for you to talk with me that way. Please don't do that again. See, it's a solution that's not made in anger, but it can still be strong. Maybe look at your expectations in some circumstances. Perhaps you feel violated because of false expectations. You expect more than you should from a person in your life. If you're angry because a child is back-talking, maybe a phrase like, you need to obey first and then we'll talk about it would help. And then work on the training behind the scenes. If you're being stubborn yourself, you might need to practice giving in. That might be your solution. Practice giving in. You might say, it's okay, I can be wrong and learn. That can be your solution phrase. It's okay, I can be wrong and learn. It's helpful to have a phrase that you can say that will address your problem. Sometimes it just means letting the anger go, letting the problem go because it's not worth dealing with at this time, or you're making it bigger than it is. It's not enough in life to be right. It's not enough in life to be right. You need to be wise. Wisdom knows how to respond to make a change. Anger just says, I'm right. Wisdom knows how to respond to make a change. For generalized anger, a significant problem, really consider the idea of anger turning to sadness. Because anger hardens hearts and builds walls. Sadness softens hearts and opens doors for healing. And for internal anger problems, do musar. I mean, you want to find the opposite positive character trait that you're struggling with and work on that. So frustration, when things don't go your way, if that's something you struggle with, work on perseverance. Work on the quality of patience, the quality of sensitivity, or the quality of humility and self-control. After decades, Jacob eventually learns how to solve his anger problem. He's afraid of his brother's rage when he returns home. And so what does he do? He thinks about it. He prays. He wrestles with the Lord about it. And then what he does is he develops an elaborate solution. He presents gift after gift after gift. And finally, he bows before his brother. And then what happens to Esav? It works. Esav comes and embraces him. So if Jacob were writing his anger plan, he would have put down, practice humility with brother. Practice humility with brother. And he would have practiced that. And that's what he did in the end. Today, later on, we're going to hear from Joyce about our new Chavruta project that will focus on Musar work, developing these kinds of things, partnering with each other to cultivate these kinds of qualities in a practical way. The Apostle Paul is a Musar master. He loves Musar. His solution for anger, put on the quality of love. That's his big solution. In 1 Corinthians 13, love is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love is at the far distant end of the angry spectrum. It's the ultimate solution for anger. And in Ephesians, in our verse, after he says, don't sin in your anger because it's going to grieve the Holy Spirit, he says, instead, be kind to one another. Kindness. Compassionate, he says. Forgiving each other just as God and Messiah also forgave you. Paul tells us that to really reduce our anger, we need to practice love. So we practice kindness. We practice compassion, forgiving each other just as God and Messiah forgave you. Paul's message in Ephesians isn't just that we become free of anger as individuals here, but more that we become a community. That's his whole message, that we become a community who never lets anger get a foothold. Instead, we are a community which can solve problems, a community, I should say, who has godly solutions, a community who is characterized by love. So Shabbat Shalom, and may we become that community characterized by love.